Hey, Big Blue Banter listener, would you like an extra $500? That's a lot of cash. Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. This survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and, in turn, help this show. That's bluewirepods.com/survey, where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Make sure to read the full terms and disclaimer, plus complete the survey for a chance to win. bluewirepods.com/survey. The link is also in the show notes of this episode.
Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. Joined as always, my co-host Nick Velato, and we are joined by a special guest, a reoccurring guest. You guys talked about it last year. Times were better a little bit at the time. There's still some hope for the Giants, but you mentioned how good the analysis was when we had Matty Brown on, so we had to do it again because this is one of the best X's and O's analysts out there. It's Matty Brown. You can find him on the Seattle Overload podcast or Seahawks on Tape, which is a Substack. This is where you're going to get good content on X's and O's and on film. And for anyone who joins our show, which we get a lot, by the way, stragglers who are Seahawks fans, if you're not following Matty, you're not following the right kind of analysis on this team. I'm just going to be point blank about that. So without any further ado, Matty, how are you doing today? And thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be back. I know, very kind words as well. I know we had a good time last time talking about the matchup, and hey, There's stuff to talk about. A lot's changed in Seattle. I know perhaps stuff hasn't changed with the Giants in a way that maybe it might do finally.
Yeah, it's a little rough on the Giants front, Matty. But I want to ask you, and we'll start with Seattle. What's the overall feel with the franchise right now? We're 4 weeks in. The Seahawks, man, they've played not really the most challenging quarterbacks, it's safe to say, until the week 4 matchup against Detroit, where they dropped over 40 points on the team. But at the same time, there was really no one on the defensive front that seemed to be healthy other than, I think, Jaron Reed was like one of the only ones. So I just wanted to ask you, what's the fan base feel like right now heading into week 5 against the New York Giants?
Well, I think if they had beat Detroit, it would have been absolute hype overload. Like, it would, suddenly, I think the expectation heading into the season is, given what the franchise described as, a disappointment, they missed the playoffs last year, the minimum expectation, I think, from fans is the playoffs. Maybe that's a bit harsh on a first-time head coach in Mike McDonald, but, starting 3-0, going to Detroit, playing a solid game, I think people are still very, very excited about what this team can be. And like you said, Nick, first 3 weeks of the season, by DVOA, that's a bottom 5 schedule. I know that the Broncos didn't end up beating the Jets, which is weird. I haven't seen what actually happened in that game. I don't think much happened. It looked like a complete mess. But anyway, maybe the Broncos are slightly better. But Detroit was so exciting because it's like, oh my gosh, championship matchup. It's a real opponent. They're going to be tested. And then it's unfortunate because, like you said, Nick, 5 of the players on the defensive line are injured. Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe. I mean, that's arguably their first string D-line. Wow. Then they're missing their first string weak side backer in Jerome Baker. And then their best safety, arguably, Julian Love, gets hurt in game and misses probably about half of the game. So it's like, we didn't really see what the defense could do at full strength against a great Lions opponent. And so I think the fan base, while disappointed about losing that, they're proud of the fight that the team showed, and they're proud of what the offense was able to do, and they're, I think, still very, very excited.
There's a lot I want to ask you about, Matty, especially with new scheme on both sides of the ball. But before I get to any of that, I do want to discuss with you Geno Smith, because in my estimation, and obviously, I don't want to say this with Jaden Daniels playing the way he is, but this is the best quarterback the Giants are going to face on tape so far. And I know that includes Dak Prescott, who they faced, and Jaden Daniels, because I think from actually playing the quarterback position, Geno's playing the best ball that I've seen right now. I don't get a chance to watch tape of every quarterback, every game, but I did get a chance to watch tape of Geno for another podcast that I do against the Lions, and I was unbelievably impressed with what I saw on film. So does what I've seen check out with what you've seen, and maybe get a little into what the Giants can expect here from this quarterback as far as his first year in this new system and what he's doing from a quarterback standpoint that has stood out to you on tape?
Oh, hell yeah. This is the most exciting thing about the team right now. I mean, very early on, you could see that Geno Smith, when handed the opportunity, was playing really solid football, really good football, and kind of it was a remarkable comeback story. But I think what he's doing this year is particularly impressive. It makes actually in the offseason when they, new regime, they go and get Sam Howell and trade for him. There was even speculation that Geno maybe wasn't particularly liked by the new coaching staff. And to say that now when they're basically building the entire ship around his ability to be what is an elite pocket passer right now, and a guy who is so good managing pockets. He's been pressured a fair bit, not quite as much as last year, which is the key. But to put it into context, I mean, if you look at their pass rate, they have an over 60% pass rate with the win probability between 20% or 80%, so accounting for garbage time and stuff. Their pass frequency over expected in like every single situation is massively higher than you'd expect. They're dropping back a ton. They're slinging the football. And yeah, some of that was the Lions game state was funky, but a lot of it is Ryan Grubb saying, hey, Geno can get it done. He's a gunslinger. And honestly, they're pushing him and Grubb right now. They're pushing the limits of what I think is possible in the NFL in terms of passing at that rate. The run game is there. It's a thing, but it's certainly not the prominent feature. And McDonald said they want to be a physical football team, and he hinted about running the football. Metcalf, you had a kind of dichotomy of off-season narratives of, is this Metcalf on the one hand goes, I think we're going to be a run-first offense, but then on the other hand, Geno Smith's saying how it's a drop-back offense. Well, we know what Ryan Grubb did in Washington in his final season when he had the receiving weapons of McMillan, Polk, and Udunze. Now he has this talented Seattle receiving core and also a quarterback who is, I think he can do anything really in terms of the drop back game in the NFL, the passing game in the NFL. So I'm absolutely loving it. Although I do question how sustainable it is passing that much, particularly behind Seattle's offensive line, which is a bit questionable.
Must be nice. So I want to ask you, what is the biggest takeaway other than the passing that we're talking about from the transition away from Shane Waldron, where there was minimal success at times with the Seattle Seahawks, to this Ryan Grubb coached offense that seems to be much more innovative?
That's a thorny one, because I think, like I said, it's very early in the season, and there's a number of like elements where, for instance, they're dead last in the league in play action usage, which you would think they'd be high at. In under center play action, they're only doing that 7% of under center snaps, and they don't use under center much at all. Just in general, they're a very shotgun heavy team. So I think this is it. Like at a certain point, you'd think they'd have to tap into those things, particularly with how profitable under center is as a way of moving the football easy for the quarterback and getting explosive and fairly minimal risk. I think what's different to the Waldron stuff is it's a bit more kind of like ISO ball on the outside and really kind of isolating receivers on defenders and picking on their leverage a bit more. And then in a way that reminds me of Brian Schottenheimer in a positive way, the way in which they get pre-snap identifiers of, hey, they're in man, they're in zone, and they're doing that consistently time and time again, rather than in high leverage downs. I think that's probably an improvement from Waldron. But Waldron had I'm not the biggest Shane Waldron fan, but he had a very messy offensive line situation, and he also had fairly good success moving the football, but it was the scoring of points which was an issue. And I'm not ready to say that Seattle, it sounds ridiculous after the Detroit game, I'm not ready to say, though, that they've fixed those issues. Like, they've faced three... Well, again, like I said, Broncos did a good job against the Jets, but I don't know about the quality of defense they've faced. They've also had stalls and lulls in those first three games, which reminded me of Waldron in the previous season. And then that Lions game was just crazy because, they ran 21 snaps of man-to-man defense. Some of that's two-man, but not many teams are going to leave DK Metcalf one-on-one with Carlton Davis. Like, all respect to Carlton Davis, but that was a battle which DK is kind of winning. And DK, in previous years, he's not always been the type of receiver to... Sounds ridiculous because he's 6'4", he runs so fast. You think he's like, oh, he's a number one receiver. Well, he's not. He's very, 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 very good, but he's never been like the top 5 receiver in the league. However, this season, he's making like the tight contested catches, which were missing in his game at times, where he'd snatch at stuff. And he spoke about how he'd worked on that in the offseason. And if he's able to do that, and whenever he's one-on-one, you can actually seriously just throw it up to him, even if it's fairly tight coverage, and he can come down with it a bit more often, well, then I think, there's even higher ceiling for the offense. And I mean, he's on pace for over 1,500 yards in like receiving yards, which I don't know if that can hold, but if he can make those catches, maybe it can. So yeah, anyway, I've just waffled for ages, but I can't remember where we started.
Well, there's a lot look, this offense is interesting under Ryan Grubb. I basically went into the season saying, I want to see if he can bring this to the NFL, this idea, but I'm worried about the offensive line holding up based on what I saw last offseason. So far, so good, I would say, on the offensive line for the most part. They've been healthier, which helps a lot. But what I want to ask you about is, I mentioned earlier, I think this will be the most difficult challenge for the Giants secondary because of some of the things you brought up. A lot of these isolated routes on the outside and taking advantage of cornerback leverage. The Giants go into this week right now, as of Wednesday when we're recording this, with 2 of their top 3 corners, Drew Phillips and Adoree Jackson, not practicing. And I would say at this point, unlikely to play. They haven't been tested a lot in the secondary because Dak Prescott just ran quick game the whole time. Basically, he didn't take any shots because he didn't need to. But that may not be the case. That's not Ryan Grubb, and he's going to put a lot of burden on them. What I want to ask you about is, from an individual matchup standpoint, we already talked about Metcalf, and you talked about how this is match. There are a lot of ISOs. Jackson Smith-Njigba. So I want to hear what you have to say about him on tape, because here's what the data says. According to Fantasy Points team data, Jackson Smith-Njigba average separation score ranks 37th out of 45 receivers who have ran 100+ routes this year. And my friend my colleague who watches him said the tape was pretty rough in week 4 for JSN. He was a player Nick and I were very high on coming out of college. Has the tape, in your estimation, aligned with that separation score? And if so, what's been the issue right now for JSN on tape?
This is a great topic, because I think you draft JSN and everyone's like, oh, well, Tyler Lockett is 32 years old and he's getting up there, and everyone's seen how he goes down to avoid hits and how much longer is he going to play, and he's a successful realtor in Seattle now, so he's clearly thinking about his future career.
I didn't even
selling
know that.
houses, crazy. Selling properties. There you go. So he's and he's a very switched on guy. And, how much longer is he going to play? And, JSN's also similar type of height, slightly bigger. And he's played in the slot, but he's also played outside. And, like for like. Well, actually, if you look at JSN in college, his average depth of the target, like his final year at Ohio State, when they had Marvin Harrison Jr. and a guy I'm forgetting the name of, but 2 more outside-y types, his ADOT was like 5 yards. Like, he was the kind of slot, sort of quick option route, choice route runner where the ball's thrown at sort of 5 yards and he then catches the ball and records yak and yards after the catch, and he's a quick separator versus zone. But on the downfield stuff, I've yet to see really in the NFL proof that he can at least consistently make those catches. I mean, he's not the quickest player. He's fluid. He's a very smooth athlete, but he's not especially sudden. I mean, before Lockett broke his leg, he was absolutely rapid.
Right.
And then his real skill was separating late or at least it used to be. I haven't seen it for a minute, but his real skill was separating late at the vertical catch points. Like, we're talking 20-yard plus stuff. He's very, very good at separating late, and then elite at tracking the football in the air. Like, the way he reads the football off the quarterback's hand is insane. JSN it's kind of been up and down. I remember the Lions game, which you mentioned, Dan. Gino threw him a back shoulder throw, which was perfect. Like, he was running slot fade, which Grubb loves. Threw him back shoulder against man-to-man. JSN not particularly open, but that's okay. It's a back shoulder throw against man-to-man, and the receiver's on top and playing for the fade. And it's thrown back shoulder so you can catch it. Hits him in the hand, and he kind of drops the pass. And how many opportunities you're going to get like that in a game. And I think it's the whole thing when you have a guy like Lockett who hasn't fallen off too much, even though the production looks like it has, in terms of his usage and his target depth, particularly the last 2 weeks, he's still getting the deeper type stuff. And then DK Metcalf, who, if he's going to elevate even more, one of those guys has to be more of the short to intermediate guy rather than the intermediate to deep guy. And that's JSN right now. So yeah, I think he isn't as speedy and bursty to separate against coverage that maybe you might initially have thought. So it's a good topic.
Definitely a good topic. And I want to transition a little bit to the rushing attack. So watching Kenneth Walker on Monday Night Football, I was starting to come away with this opinion that maybe this guy is one of the better running backs in the league, and he's not being I don't believe he's being discussed like that. Now, do you agree with that assessment? And what is your overall read on the running back room of the Seattle Seahawks with Kenneth Walker and somebody Dan and I both loved coming out of UCLA, Zach Charbonnet?
Well, Walker's just incredible, isn't he? Like against the Patriots in particular, when Walker missed that game, that was week 2. Seattle really struggled to move the ball. Like the Pats front got it done. They just beat the heck out of them in the trenches, and Charbonnet didn't really have many places to go. And it was the type of game where you're like, well, there's nowhere to go. But Kenneth Walker, he's the type of guy who could just bounce it in an incredible way out the back door, break a tackle, and then he's gone, because he does have that home run threat ability, and just he almost bends angles, like he's physics defying in how he cuts back on guys and just accesses lanes that like 1 or 2 backs maybe could do. I don't know if any back in the league can do his type of creativity and style. He's a very agile guy. Maybe Saquon, but he's kind of more dense, I guess. Yeah, Walker's a very, very fun player, and it's the type of creativity that when an offensive line is maybe struggling a bit, or it just helps your run game hit. And I mean, it's a big question with Seattle's run game. Can they be efficient running the football if they're not going to do it so much? Do you need to establish the run or not? I mean, I'm really excited to find out. I think that with Walker, it's an element of boom or bust. He's got better at it, but in the past, he's been hunting that home run rather than, hey, let's just cut inside where the crease is and get you 3 or 4 yards. But I mean, that play in the flat versus Detroit, where he's thrown the ball as a pass catcher, which I think something Grubb's trying to do a bit more of. But again, there's only one football and there's so many different receivers. And then he like double flips and stays up, and what? I don't know what that was. Like the core strength, and he had injured his oblique. Like, I don't know, these guys athletically are just remarkable. But yeah, it's an interesting run game. I had really high hopes for it, like schematically from Grubb coming into the season, like his blend of concepts and the way that he was motioning to create like softer edges and advantageous angles for blocking schemes. Make a corner have to make a tackle, make the defense have to bump their fits over, or they're in trouble if they don't. Stress them with lateral stuff before pounding it downhill. It just hasn't fully come to the forefront, and I feel against like beefy lines, talented lines, particularly lines who run like odd fronts, like the Giants. It could be a problem, and ultimately, the one player who I'm really, really nervous of, like I think a lot of teams would be Dexter Lawrence, and I'm sure you guys are still enjoying that part of New York Giants football. Yes. So.
Now, one of the few bright spots left on the team. No, I'm kidding. There's more than a few bright spots. I mean, the Giants, look, they've made a big jump on the offensive line. They're top 5 in fewest sacks allowed, and they're also top 5 in sacks on the defense side. While the trenches have improved, there's just one. It seems to be a common denominator here that a lot of people don't like to address, but it is what it is on that front. Let me ask you another question here about the offense, and we can move to the defense. So you mentioned slot fades as something that Ryan Grubb likes to call a lot. Expectations as Giants fans moving forward for this game and for this matchup. What are some of the other concepts that he likes to run or plays that he likes to call that we can be aware of for this defense? Because slot fade is already scaring the hell out of me with the cornerback situation the way it is right now for the Giants. But what else can we look out for?
Well, I think it's not necessarily a root concept to look out for, but one real element to the offense that is immediately like, oh, that's slightly different, is they will sprinkle in tempo where they'll go really fast suddenly, and they're quite good at it. And they're sort of letting Gino really coordinate things back there in terms of they get to the line, then Gino will check what the defense is in. Occasionally, they'll snap the ball immediately. Sometimes they even do like the college style of everyone turns to the sideline and it's like a check with me where I think they're signaling stuff in. And I think they have cards. So that caught the Patriots out in particular. Like they caught the Patriots in some base stuff, got them in some like shaky checks and hit like the slot fade for a touchdown, which shouldn't have basically the two defenders got confused on who was the deep guy and who was the flat guy. And yeah, that's like a really kind of collegey element to the offense, which is working so far and particularly stands out. I'd say it's less, obviously at UW, it was incredibly vertical and it was very kind of outside the numbers.
Yep.
Gino is very good at, the intermediate over the middle stuff, and that's becoming more of a thing. But Grubb isn't that conceptually diverse. It's more how he presents his different concepts and dresses them up. I mean, a big one, I don't know, actually, I should have looked at it before I came here, but I don't know what the Giants' main coverages are this year, but mesh is a big thing for Grubb. And it's not fancy. It's straight up, two crossing routes. Occasionally, in between those, there's the sit route, a bit deeper in between the two hook defenders, which you hit against zone, and then sometimes the running back will run a wheel out of the backfield. But it's a lot of that against man-to-man. And Grubb will call the same concepts dressed up slightly differently time and time again if you can't stop it. So if the Giants don't do that, that you'll just keep seeing it and you'll be like, why can we not stop this same play every single time? So, yeah. And a lot of empty. Quite a spread out team, a lot of empty formations, and again, a lot of kind of, hey, we're getting pressured to crap here because, on the offensive line, they're down to the third string right tackle, and they are healthier on the interior, but they're shaky on the interior, and they do have their left tackle, but the offensive line struggled. But a lot of the time, instead of keeping more guys in protection, Grubb will spread you out, and Gino will just pick where the weak spot is. And if you are spread out, then it's easy to see what where's the pressure coming from, what coverage are you in, where's the isolated mismatch, etc., etc.
What's up, everybody? It's Jerry Ferrara. I've got a new podcast called Throwbacks with Heisman Trophy winner Matt Leinart, where we will be talking about all things sports, all things pop culture, and all things about our lives. From football locker rooms to Hollywood green rooms, we've got you covered. We're your weekly destination for the games you want to hear about and the stories you won't forget. Listen to Throwbacks on Apple Podcasts or Spotify with new episodes every Thursday.
What's up, big Blue Banter listeners? I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. And all of Mint Mobile's plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Every man knows the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave. Now, what if I told you that you no longer have to wait weeks or even months between appointments to experience it? Introducing Manscaped's newest innovation, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your home. Whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every time. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code BIGBLUE for 20% off plus free shipping. Get the shave you desire. Be silky smooth and get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com. Those slot fades are scary. I think Metcalf has 2 touchdowns on them. And the one against the Dolphins, what was that? I think it was like a cover 6, and they isolated the middle 4th, and he just went inside, got the guy to bite, and was just wide open. And it was just, damn, Gino just threw it up there. But the way the Giants win this football game is dominating in the trenches. And I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of just 4-man rushes, a lot of drop 7 into coverage. I don't think we're going to see a similar game plan that we saw against the Browns, where it was just pressure from Shane Bowen. So I wanted to ask you about this offensive line, specifically Stone Forsythe and how he deals with speed rushers, because he might see a decent amount of Brian Burns. Kayvon Thibodeau had a good game against you guys last year. I think like Jake Curran was your starting offensive tackle. It seems like you guys are a little bit more stable on the offensive line. So what's your overall impression of the offensive line? We brought up Dexter Lawrence before. How do you think of Connor Williams, who has struggled with power throughout his career? Dalvin Tomlinson used to bitch him all the time when he was a member of the Dallas Cowboys. And then also, I just want to ask you, this is depressing for Giants fans, about Charles Cross. Like, how's he playing for you guys? Because the Giants, they got Evan Neal right before that, and that hasn't worked out for the Giants.
Charles Cross has been in his it'll be his 3rd year. That's crazy. Yep. Time flies. But he has been outstanding other than one play. But other than that, he's been really, really, really good. So that's kind of the blind side protected and taken care of, and he's improved a bit more in the run game. I think they challenged him to finish players a bit more in the run game, and I think he's just got a bit bigger, which, he's still fairly young, and he's in the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. So now, right tackle Stone Forsythe, as I said, that's their 3rd string guy. He's been, I think, better than expected. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson's going to get you speed rushing around the arc. Like, it's just up to the quarterback to sort of make the tackle right if that happens. I think Forsythe's real difficulties have been a bit like Cross in the past, speed to power type stuff. And Forsythe, he did play right tackle in college, but, he's kind of Seattle swing tackle. Like, he has some experience on the left side too. He's doing okay. The real issue, like the real weak point on the line, other than Connor Williams, where I'm nervous about. I mean, you'd be nervous against Dexter Lawrence against any center in the league, but as you said, Nick, speed to power is his thing too. But the real issue's been right guard. A left guard, Laken Tomlinson's like a steady vet, but he's like probably just above replacement level type play. And then at right guard, Anthony Bradford, the 2nd-year 4th round pick, he's just got quite heavy feet. He's very physical. He has like a highlight tape that's tough to quit, in that he'll pancake people, he can displace people in the run game, he can get after it, and he's nasty and big, and he just has power. And a lot of the reason he hasn't fully lost his job yet, in the words of Grubb, is because he has that type of power that this year's 3rd round pick, Christian Haynes, doesn't have yet. So you've got this kind of weird thing of, we might like Haynes in pass pro, but in the run game we'd like Bradford, and then how's Haynes going to deal with certain type of powerful rushes and play action full slide protection and that type of stuff where you need to just go whack a guy. So yeah, right. If you're going to get into some looks where you isolate your best rusher on the fish, that right guard spot is the one to pick on. And a big problem for Seattle's O-line as well has been, procedural penalties, false starts, being a bit angsty and nervous. And obviously then if you're 5 yards further back, then you're more likely to get pass rushed in a more intense manner. So that's the whole deal. But they were better against Detroit. I thought against Detroit that was a real improvement, and not least helped by the lack of procedural penalties from the offensive line. At least I know there's a lot of penalties in that game, but not really false starts on the O-line. or
There were a
holding.
ton of penalties in that game. One final thing before we move to the defense side of the ball, whether it be due to the injury guarantee in his contract, the Giants being out of the playoff contention at that time, or the fact that, until this point, Daniel Jones has been the worst deep ball thrower in the entire NFL. And it's by the numbers and it's by the film. I just put a 3-minute cut up. These throws are not even close. They're not even in the vicinity of the receivers. That can improve, and he could remain the starter due to it if they start winning football games, but they're 1-3 right now. And there is some discussion about how would this offense look with Drew Lock. So I wanted to get your input on what you saw from Lock on film, how you think he might be able to fit a Brian Dable system with a receiver like Malik Neighbors, an improved offensive line. Like, is this any kind of option for the Giants? Was he improving on getting the ball out on time, running quick game concepts? Because some of the things I've seen on tape from Lock is just he's been late a lot of times with the ball. So what have you seen, and how would you project that?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate assessment, Dan. I don't know if it's the game still going really fast for him, or him feeling like the pressure of it, but he somehow managed to beat the Eagles last season, which snapped a 4-game losing streak for Pete Carroll, which was very rare and was just a bizarre moment. But if you watch how he did that, it's a lot of snap the ball. Oh my God, the defense, that's crazy. I'm in the game. The defense are coming. Oh, what's the coverage? Oh crap! And then he just breaks to his right, starts sprinting, and then lobs a pass down the field, yeets it downfield. Oh, Noah Fant's caught it. Phew. And we're marching and we've put a drive together. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Dable could do some. He's literally the same player. You talk about him in the same way as you did coming out of college, just like, oh, he's kind of late and there's some sloppy footwork things, and is he seeing the full picture here? But the traits. How about that arm? And we could give him, some run pass options from the shotgun and have him throw a bubble, put some training wheels on him, and yeah, Malik Neighbors, that's a fun player. Let's throw a fade to him occasionally. It's
sounds pretty bleak, to be honest.
I mean, I'm rooting for Drew Lock, and I know Seattle was hoping to get him back to the point that they gave up like actual draft assets to get Sam Howell as the backup, because they felt kind of not blindsided, but somewhat surprised and then panicked about their backup quarterback situation. But and he left to go. It seemed the messaging around that was odd as well, right? It seemed like it was going to be a completely open quarterback competition to start, and then it wasn't. Like,
at all.
Did he get in the building and they were like, "Oh, you're not actually any good"?
Well, the Giants did deny that messaging from the start, at least publicly.
Right.
So
it was kind of like it could have just been Pete Carroll, like or maybe John Schneider was misreporting.
I think it was also something to do with Daniel Jones's injury and not knowing the timeline of when he would return, and he was ready for training camp, so it kind of threw cold water on that entire idea.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think Drew Lock will give you some fun plays. Like, it will be an experience. That's what I'd say. So, in a way that I don't know if Daniel Jones is got as exciting an arm, and I know he can run around a bit, but yeah.
Definitely doesn't have as exciting an arm. I think anyone with 2 eyes could probably tell you that. But it was just interesting. I wanted to get your take. I think I'm probably along the lines of you. It might get worse. Like, a lot of fans want to see something different, but if he can't keep this offense on time, it's just going to be even uglier, despite maybe hitting a few deep balls occasionally.
I think you can run the offense. Like, obviously that's why they acquired him, but I think you can run the same offense. Like, he can do the movement stuff.
Yeah, they're not really asking Jones to do much, so that's the kind of the thought on it. No, I'm not trying to be like funny about it.
Yeah,
simple. He has Malik Neighbors is the highest out of all wide receivers. He has the highest first read target percentage by far of any receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
The chart is Neighbors light years away, and then everyone else, and then the rest of the offense is just throw to Wan'Dale Robinson essentially right now. So I mean, it's not a lot to ask for, but the ball still has to come out on time, which Jones is doing a better job of this year. And I'm not so sure Lock could.
No.
I just hope the Giants can get back to the efficiency that they had in the red zone back in 2022, and also in week 3 against Cleveland, where they had touchdowns in the red zone and against this really good defense. We're like, holy crap. And then all that crumbled in week 4, and they kicked 5 freaking field goals again with this Greg Joseph kicker. It's Matt. The Giants always find crazy ways to lose, but we are going to transition here, Matty, to Mike Macdonald's defense. Now, what is your overall opinion of this defense? What's unique about it? What ideas did he bring over from Baltimore? Because I know the blitz rate is through 4 games. I think you guys are 15th in the league. You guys are about half. You blitz 23.9% of the time. Pressure rate's number 1, 35.9% of the time. I'm imagining that's because you guys played Bo Nix in his first start, Skylar Thompson, Jacoby Brissett, and a lot of younger quarterbacks. But I would like your opinion on that, and then what's your overall feeling on Mike Macdonald's defense?
Yeah, that blitz rate slightly surprising. Do you know if that includes like simulated pressures? You know, where they're rushing 4 but sending.
I don't think it is. I think it's blitz rate 5+.
Right. Well, then if it's not, then that's not surprising, because I think he does do a lot of, we're gonna send someone from the second level who you wouldn't ordinarily expect to rush, and we're going to drop a guy who you would expect to rush, and only 4 are coming, but we've sent a pressure path and we've sped up the quarterback, or we've kept the running back in, or we've just broke your protection and forced you to slide the wrong way and got a sack with rushing just 4, or pressure affected the quarterback just rushing 4. Yeah, what else did you say, Nick? Like, do I like this defense?
Well, yeah, what's your opinions on the defense? And when it comes to pressure, do you think the Seattle Seahawks being number 1 can be slightly attributed to the opponents they've faced through 4 games?
Yeah, I think definitely attributed to the opponents they've faced. I mean, the Detroit game was obviously a big problem for them, because they weren't able to get into where Mike Macdonald is like the best in the NFL, where the third down situations. I think Detroit only had 6 third down situations in that entire game, and they kept moving the ball. Like, they scored so many points, they had so many drives, right? So it was just not enough negative plays and not enough third downs for McDonald to get in his bag and call these exotic stuff. And he has been fairly vanilla in terms of what he's called and the types of concepts. But it is the same thing as what we saw in Baltimore, and he's trying to do largely the same stuff. I'm close to getting to the stage, and I'm really excited, right? Like, I love defense. I'm a defensive guy at heart. I think McDonald is a brilliant in-game play caller, and Detroit was almost surprising in that I felt, even with the injuries, he would be able to cause some problems for Ben Johnson. And he actually, he came out and admitted that he felt the plan needs to be tied to, got to make sure we're asking players things to do what they can do, call a better game in certain situations, diagnose what's happening in real time. And he was very critical of himself as a play caller, and I thought he could have done a better job there. But yeah, on the whole, I'm really excited about what he's doing play calling wise and the scheme and the pressure. But I do want to see them healthy against the real opponent. And I'm also got some concerns where, as I was going, I'm nearly at the stage where I'm doing what people used to do when other teams would try and run the Legion of Boom system, where they're like, oh, well, we need to find the next Richard Sherman. We need to find the next Cam Chancellor to run this scheme. That's why it's not working. What's really cool is Seattle has the guy who called the defense in as their head coach, calling the defense and doing the stuff. So that's great. They have a great D-line. They have a great interior D-line. But my 2 concerns are inside linebacker and the big nickel type role. Now, I'll start with inside linebacker because that's the biggest concern. Week 4, the Seahawks gave up in too high defense, which McDonald likes running too high. So cover 2, cover 4, cover 6. 7.22 yards per carry versus the run game of the Lions, 65 yards on 9 carries. It was similar in New England, where they gave up 180 yards rushing on the ground, which, by the way, that's a fairly one-dimensional New England offense if you've seen their receiving group. And Jacoby Brissett, I think, slightly underrated, but their quarterback's not the best, is he? The run game is a problem, and why that's linked to the linebackers is their defensive front was making some really good plays to help out, like the D-line was making some outstanding plays, like Leonard Williams playing out of his mind. Jonathan Hankins, the backup nose tackle, was doing some crazy stuff.
All the Giants.
There you go. Jaron Reed, not a former Giant, but he's been playing really well. Their interior is doing crazy things, but the inside backers, particularly in those too high stuff where McDonald right now is asking them to almost two gap. So they have a primary gap, but if the ball declares, they have to fall back, stack, track, and then fall back. They're really struggling. They just really don't look comfortable with it. It doesn't help that Baker's been injured, but Tyrell Dodson coming out of the Bills, he's really good when he has just one gap to worry about. When there's a bit more to it, it gets a bit shaky for him. On a similar subject, even if you have those inside linebackers, right, like Baltimore. In Baltimore, they had Patrick Queen drafted in the first round, but they were still struggling with Mike McDonald as DC until, lo and behold, who arrives? Roquan Smith.
Right.
And that kind of takes them, along with a big nickel in Kyle Hamilton, to the stratospheres. Even with that, in the second half of 2023, the Ravens went from being, in the first half, they were a top 5 run defense, okay? By EPA per play, by any metric, if you even account for garbage time, right? They're top 5 run defense. Second half of that season, they were 30th in run defense. And the real issue was gap run plays, like duo, plays with a puller, that type of stuff. And so even with the talent discrepancy that Seattle has at linebacker this year, there's a conceptual thing going on here where they're running fronts, which are straight up they're great for getting pass rush and edges flying off at the edge and accenting them. But against gap runs, which there's now a whole half season of tape and the first 4 weeks of this season, 2 games in particular, of those runs in particular being difficult for Seattle. So yeah, the run defense is a bit of a concern for me, but McDonald, some of that was managed decline in Baltimore. He has a bit of a secret sauce going on with it where he's playing, a cat and mouse act, and he's able to get the negative plays and affect quarterbacks still and whatnot. But the linebacker's inability to fit the run in too high, combined with the structural issues, is a problem for me. And the other thing is the linebacker's an intermediate coverage, where this scheme, a lot of the time, the ball gets passed in the intermediate areas of the field over the middle. And these inside backers are just not very good at it. Like Tyrese Knight, who's the backup will, he's a 4th round pick, I think, which that felt like a reach to me. But anyway, whatever. It's the guy they wanted. He's just very raw at it. And Dodson is just like, oh, I see the run. I'm going to go. And then it's like, no, don't go. And then it's like, which way do I open my hips to find the race route? Like, how am I going to find this crosser? And he's just not very good at that. So it was crazy watching the Dolphins tape. And you're like, oh my God, like that is so open. If this wasn't Skylar Thompson, it's like, I was like, what's Jared Goff going to do? Like, it's going to be bad. It's going to be so bad. Oh my gosh, Dodson's just not there, or Knight is so behind that, or that safety could have driven that better even. And then lo and behold, you go to Detroit and I'm kind of doing I told you so, but it's not very fun, is it? Because they got absolutely, Goff completes 18 of 18 and a lot of it is that kind of intermediate linebacker issue. Then the run defense thing I spoke about, if you're going to be in like the too high stuff, which they do want to do, having like a Kyle Hamilton, who it's like saying having a Cam Chancellor. That's why I spoke about that analogy, because they don't grow on trees. Like that's a once in a generation type player, and so how Seattle kind of solves this issue with their players, like Witherspoon's really physical and aggressive. It's not really indictment of him. And they have Rayshon Jenkins, who's like a Kyle Hamilton light. He's a big type safety / nickel guy. But, involving that third guy rather than just the 2 inside backers having to 2 gap in the fit a bit more when you're playing 2 safeties back there, that might be the move. But I'd say for the Giants, run the ball, get into nasty looking formations, and do some gap stuff, and look at all the runs which have hit on Seattle, and because there's a few of them, and the Baltimore tree, because I haven't yet seen, and this is what I'm so excited for, because I know McDonald can do it, because he's proven himself to be a very excellent designer, and streamline of an existing Baltimore system, but also, you know, an in-game adapter and adjuster, how is he going to evolve it from where it's at right now? And also maybe it will need some added personnel for Seattle to be more than like an average defense. But an average defense would be a hell of an improvement from the last 2 years. I just don't want a third consecutive year of atrocious run defense, which it actually could be like that. No one's really talking about it, but it definitely could be, given the history.
And
I'd be more interested if the Giants didn't enter their week 4 matchup against Dallas with a similar game plan. Hey, we're going to run the ball. Dallas is historically bad stopping the run. And then they absolutely got bitched by Mozzie Smith in the Dallas defense from a scheme perspective, and also from, it seemed like, a personnel perspective. But I wanted to just have you clarify one thing, Matty. Even if you guys are full strength, obviously you're going to be a little bit better against the run with Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Boye Mafe, Jerome Baker. But even if you guys are at full strength, you still see some structural and personnel issues when it comes to defending duo runs specifically.
Yeah.
That should be good news for the Giants. That's the one rushing scheme they've employed successfully in week 2 against a Washington team that purportedly is good against the run. At least they have solid interior defensive linemen, but their linebackers, even though that some of them, Bobby Wagner, is experienced, it seemed like the Giants just ran the ball right down their throat just with that specific rushing style.
Yeah. I mean, just watch the Patriots tape. Watch how the Patriots were able to run the ball on a fully healthy Seattle.
Well, there were a couple duo runs in the red zone too with Detroit that I was just like, what is going on here? There's one Gibbs run that I remembered somewhere in the red zone. Yeah.
It's like that wasn't missing D linemen. And by the way,
Right.
Jaron Reed and Jonathan Hankins were in on the play, and they've been playing really good football. And it was early in the game; they weren't tired. That wasn't to do with the D line. That was to do with you're playing like 2 high safeties, and you're trying to fit the run a man down. You're not involving the nickel in the fit. You're asking him to straight up play like coverage to run. So you're outnumbered severely. You're asking your linebackers to 2-gap. I think what was cool about that, Dan, and I could be so wrong, but it's like a general topic as well, is when you're down a man in the run game, you sort of have to. It helps if you can identify what type of run you're getting, obviously, and then play that type of run. So a lot of times, as you guys will know watching the Giants, a lot of times when you get duos, so power without the puller, the formation is like, you know, a pair of tight ends on one side or just one tight end, and it's under center, and it looks very obvious what's happening. A lot of teams now are offenses coming out in that same look and then running inside zone, where the defense is expecting it to run downhill towards the tight end side and then bounce out off the tight ends. And what actually ends up happening is the running back does that, and then he cuts back through the backside A gap or B gap because they've all over pursued for the gap run when it's actually zone, and he's running off the center's butt or the guard's butt. That is I think that was, well, there was a lot of Lions runs like that where they had big runs. They definitely had a big duo run. They definitely had a big inside zone run.
They did,
but the point remains. And that's where like McDonald himself has to acknowledge, and he did not do a very good job adapting or realizing what they were doing in game, uncharacteristically so. But also, it's like, that's brazen. Like, I don't know how you can do that against the Lions. Like, you can just go,
I know, right? Against that run game.
And it reminds me of 2022 Seattle, where they were doing this. They were just sitting in like straight up outnumbered, like nothing up front to help the linebackers fit the run, like no stunts or anything. They're just like, run it. We'll just try and 2-gap everyone. And oh no, that's hit again. So I'm hoping that Seattle has a bit more about them down the line, particularly when they, no disrespect to the Giants, but if they actually want to be a good team, like if they want to win the NFC West, I think the Rams, the 49ers, and the Cardinals, who all do that type of run game and are all very good at it, or at least the Rams used to be. Well, I don't know what's going on there, but anyway, you got to get good at that if you want to win the division. So the Giants might be a good test.
Matty, do you think that McDonald might adjust to maybe add another body into the box, maybe go to a little bit more middle of the field closed if Malik Neighbors is not there to account for that, to maybe even the math or get +1 in the box for Seattle?
I think so. And I think against Detroit, he tried blitzing and getting after the run game a bit more. And the thing with Detroit is when they get rolling, they have that next answer. Like they just hit the play action for them, and Seattle busts the coverage on the back end, but they have the layers. They pick up the pressure fine, and they're really good against, a lesser offense in the Giants. I think he may be more aggressive, and once you get that the key to his whole thing is getting that negative play on first down, because then he can get in his bag more on second and third down and play the run a bit less, So yes, I do think that you'll see more 8-man fronts and a bit probably blitzing to get after the run game and probably kind of designer calls for like gap runs. At least I hope so.
Yeah, that is the hope for your end, of course, and I understand that for sure, and it will be a lot easier to do if Neighbors is out of the game. Very interesting stuff because, Dallas specifically game plan to take away what the Giants want to do in the run game. I'm curious if that will happen again in this game. It probably will decide this game. I wanted to ask you a question about a couple of former Giants who are now on Seahawks. What's your overall evaluation on from the tape on two players, Julian Love and Leonard Williams?
Okay, so Leonard Williams is unbelievable. He's so good. I feel, but because he's like a like classic 3 technique, right? This is going to sound stupid, so just let me know if it is. Because he's a classic 3 technique, like he's not the absolute quickest. Like he's not Gerald McCoy or Aaron Donald, or he doesn't do the lightning quick stuff. He's probably slightly underrated as a pass rusher in that he's gonna win in a more prototypical style, and it's still really damn impressive, but it's not, whoa, that was so lightning fast with his hands. It's more like a typical rush path. And then in the run game, people don't really care about the run game, so he kind of gets overlooked, but he's just he just destroys the B gap. And they've even this year, so McDonald last year in Baltimore, he used Brent Urban as this thing, but essentially one of his ways of, hey, we're getting run on a nickel, is, okay, well, we'll play 6'7", 290-pound Brent Urban as a D end. This year, Leonard Williams has been doing that a tiny bit. So he's like this big edge type as well for them. And in base, you want to run, gap stuff out of heavier formations. Well, to run power, you need the C gap. Like you're trying to run that in the C gap. Oh, well, let's just stick Leonard Williams in the C gap. So as a run defender, he's a massive problem for teams. And it's really tough for interior offensive lines because they have to make a decision between Byron Murphy, who's like a completely different type of build and player and leverages blocks very differently. Like he drops his knee on doubles, but he's also a real load to handle, and he's kind of so explosive. And then Jaron Reed and Jonathan Hankins are really savvy vets. And then you asked about the other Giants guy.
Julian Love, yeah.
Julian Love, there you go. That's an interesting one. So he clearly hit it off with McDonald in the offseason. Like the way they were talking with each other in a mic'd up segment, it was like they were peers, which I'm not saying they're not, but it seemed that they really, the respect was very obvious in that conversation. And then since that point, it's come out that, the two do like each other. I don't know. I think Tyrell Dodson's the green dot wearer, but I think Love communicates a lot of the defense. Like it was telling to me in Monday Night Football when he got injured in that game, cut to the sideline, he's signaling in something to do with the secondary. So I think he's that kind of quarterback on the back end for Seattle. And I think they like his versatility in terms of his ability to play some mostly deep stuff, but it's, a deep quarter or a deep half, and he can come down and do some cover 3 curl flat stuff. I think he's a smart player. His angles to the football this season have been outstanding, like his pursuit angles, running the alley, making... So there's a play against Miami where they basically crack the primary force, like the edge defender. They then go and try and block the flat corner who's replacing that crackback. The flat corner dips inside the fullback's block, and so it's Julian Love who's in a deep half. So he's just playing over the top, playing his coverage. He sees all this go on, and he fits off all of that and fits outside as like the replaced player on the outside. If he hadn't done that, it might have been a touchdown. Instead, he actually ended up breaking down his feet and making the tackle. So I think he's improved a lot in terms of his tackling and open field pursuit angles. I think Seattle has in general, actually. That's been one noteworthy thing about McDonald from last season, particularly the second half of last year. But I don't love how he got an All-Pro vote last year. No, it can't have been All-Pro. No, it must have been
Pro Bowl, I think.
Pro Bowl.
I think he got an All-Pro vote.
He might have.
I think he did, because he had that game against the Eagles where. Anyway, he shouldn't have been. I don't think he's that good. He's like a solid safety in my eyes. I've been blessed watching the Seahawks with some pretty unreal safeties. So I'm fully acknowledge I'm spoiled. Like I think he's a good, solid safety, and that's nice. But there's occasional moments of like not good play, which is like any player. But it's there's at least 10 other safeties at his type of position that I'd rather have. Don't ask me to name them though.
We won't. Dan, I would say that's very similar to our assessment of those two players.
Yes.
I was a big fan of Julian Love and a massive fan of Leonard Williams. I know a lot of Giant fans were a little fed up with Leonard Williams because he had that 12 sack season where he got after Russell Wilson in like the 2020 season. Patrick Graham's drop 8 strategy worked.
I love that game.
Colt McCoy ends up going into Seattle and getting the Giants a win in Seattle. Giants never win in Seattle. It was
I love that Patrick Graham game. Like whenever I see Patrick Graham's name like on Wikipedia as a DC still, is he with the Raiders, right?
Yeah, he's with the Raiders.
I'm like, oh, but he did do that thing against Russell where it basically ended let Russ cook and ended Russell Wilson. It's like that was the Russell Wilson funeral and the game plan, the blueprint for how to like destroy Russell Wilson. And since that point, Russell's been shell shocked. I remember on just tweeting out cut ups of like, oh, here's the cover 2 side. Russell has the guy in the honey hole, but he's not throwing it. He's running out of a clean pocket. Oh, Graham's released a guy added onto the rush. It's a sack. It's like what's going on? That was a mess. I think they ran the ball like 6 times as well. They just straight up refused to run the ball in a close game. It was bizarre. Yeah. That was a sign things were just bad, like really bad.
And clearly we see how that ended. All right. On my end, I think I'm good. Do you have anything else, Nick, or should we get to predictions?
Yeah, let's get to predictions.
Okay. Matty, I'll let you take the throne first. Give me your prediction for this game, and then I'll go to you, Nick, and I'll wrap up.
Oh, I'll say 31-10 Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say 27-9 Seattle.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll say this. We didn't do a preview podcast last week, but I was 0 for 3 on my predictions of the first 3 Giants.
I got last week right. Everyone go
check
out
it's your moment, Dan. It's time to turn this thing around.
And okay, I'm going to make 2 predictions. One prediction with Malik Neighbors if he clears concussion protocol, and one without, because I think this team is drastically different if Malik Neighbors plays or doesn't play.
For sure.
So first prediction, if Malik Neighbors clears concussion protocol. So I'm going to say this. After listening to your breakdown, Matty, all of the things Seattle struggles with defensively are kind of all the things the Giants have done well offensively so far this year.
Yes.
Even in the passing game. So because of that, but they're all so dependent on Malik Neighbors playing, because a lot of this has just been 4 to 6 yard throws in the air from Jones that Neighbors does the rest with. So when you don't have Neighbors doing the rest part, it's tough. So if he plays, I think the Giants are going to be able to move the ball on offense. I'm hoping they can convert some of these to touchdowns. I think something like 35-20 Seattle if he plays. Something like that. Giants put up 20 points, 23 points. If Neighbors doesn't play, I'm thinking something along the lines of 38-13 or 38-10 Seahawks. So those are my 2 predictions. Unfortunately for Giants fans, it's a loss either way. Just look, this is a tough team to play, and the Giants are at a bad point. They're not winning football games. They've been close in some of these games, but I don't think they've faced a pass game as dynamic as Seattle's is going to be yet. And I think it's going to be an early sign for us of, oh crap, this defense isn't ready for this kind of quarterback and this kind of passing attack. So we'll see what happens.
I'm hoping that the fact that the Giants basically had a bye week and Seattle's on a short week and they had to travel from Detroit to Seattle ends up screwing with the Seahawks somehow. But I mean, again, I'm just looking.
That's definitely possible. Seahawks are on a short week, and this is what happened to Dallas too. Short week on the road for Thursday Night Football. They came out a little bit, less kind of maybe, I don't know what the word is, than they usually are. So maybe that's the same case with Seattle, but in Seattle is tough.
Yeah, no.
I really want to see Malik Neighbors because one, I want to see Seattle tested, but two, him going up against Reek Woolen, because I imagine they'll have Reek shadow Neighbors. Woolen's been playing some really good football, like straight up erasing guys in press. Like, wow. He's very, very good. And I know a lot of, well, not a lot of, but I watched Red Zone and Neighbors caught a shallow route over the middle. Well, Woolen is very good at driving on shallow routes and gaining ground on, because it's a very hard leverage play for a corner, right? Like he has to run across the middle and squeeze that. And he just like eats up ground. It's crazy. So can't even describe it. It's so impressive. So
interesting to say. Yeah,
I want to see them go at it because that'll be a battle. Just on the all-22, just every snap you'll just zoom in on that. Like, oh yeah, look at this. Oh, and he got him like this, and yeah, it was good.
One more question, actually, Matty. With Witherspoon, is he going to see Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot? Is he like the nickel for this team, or does he bounce outside? How is he utilized?
That's a good question. So, I mean, are the Giants running 3 wide receivers? Is what I'd ask.
To a decent extent, but not often.
I think they'll run a little bit more 12 in this game. Yeah. They want to try to establish the run on the road, but you'll see 11 and it will be Wan'Dale in the slot with Slayton if Slayton plays, and if Neighbors plays, and then you'll get like 12 plays from Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jalen Hyatt, what a name. The Grand Hyatt.
Litnikoff.
Yeah. Wow. That is nuts. Yeah, so if it's 12 personnel, I mean, what Seattle did, and they might do, especially thinking like, hey, we've got run game issues, so we need to get an extra guy in the box. Against the Patriots, they were like, we straight up just do not respect your receivers. We're going to play man-to-man. And it at like a very high rate for McDonald. Typically, it's like a quarter of snaps, I think, a man. Or maybe it's a sixth. Anyway, it's not that much. But against the Patriots, he ran a lot of man, a lot of cover one. And I imagine that if they feel good about Woolen on Neighbors and they're just like let's see the battle of the ages, well then Spoon would be the guy who, if it's a slot formation, is 12 personnel, Nick, well then Spoon's in the slot. But if it's a heaviest thing, I especially on early downs, you'll see Jenkins in the slot, and then on the later downs, Spoon will move in the slot, and then it'll be Trey Brown not going to the side that Neighbors is on because he's 5'10" and Neighbors ain't. So Woolen will travel.
It'll be interesting to watch. I doubt they play a lot of man against this team because Jones has been so much worse as a quarterback in zone coverage than man coverage. It's just not a good fit for him as what he can offer as a quarterback. Against man, things are more defined and he can figure it out. Against zone, it's just not for him, or hasn't been, at least in his career. I will say this, going into last week, Malik Neighbors, and this will be why I'm intrigued to watch it. Going into last week, Malik Neighbors had the highest yards per route run on press coverage against press man coverage.
Yes, I see it.
Yeah, yes. So I want to see it against. This will be the toughest test he had, just because Ward was injured and didn't shadow him against Cleveland. So this will be and Diggs. I don't know. I'm not as high on Trayvon Diggs as others personally as a corner. So this will be the toughest test for sure for him. Yeah, so that'll be fun to see if he plays. Obviously, I mean, if he doesn't play, it's just at this point as a Giants fan, it's nightmarish to watch this team without Malik Neighbors. I don't even want to think about it. So hopefully it happens. But he's Matty Brown. You can catch him on the Seattle Overload podcast for more content, or the Seahawks on Tape Substack. Thank you so much for joining us today, Matty.
Well, I feel for you guys what you're going through, but I'm hoping it's a closer game. Like, I want to see Seattle tested, and
I know, right?
You never know. It's the NFL. Any given week, for Seattle, right? It's a big opportunity for them to they've had adversity, but they've built a promising culture. But what does the culture look like after your first loss and you're at home and you're expected to win? You're favored by 5.5 points or whatever. you know, it's a big test for them, and the Giants could catch them slipping, and then everything looks very different in Seattle. So let's see. I really look forward to it.
Thank you again for joining us, Matty, though, by answering a few more questions on the mailbag that we didn't get to. So, Nick, let's dive right in. And this is a fun one, but I don't know what the answer is. It's from Bundy. What do you and Dan disagree on the most regarding the team's future, potential, or anything? It's interesting. I'm trying to think what we disagree on the most about this team.
Disagree on the most about the New York Giants. I mean, I don't know if I fully understand or know all of Dan's opinions.
Okay.
We haven't really had a pure disagreement, but at the same time, we're working with a team that has been
defined.
A very defined team that's I feel like easy to read, and it's all centralized around ineptitude. And I'm not trying to be negative, but the team has not been a good football team for a while. Dan and I agree with that as well as a lot of fans, and a lot of that is substantiated through the film. That doesn't mean everything is bleak, because the Giants actually have, I feel like, really good football players on this roster, and they could turn it around if they can address certain key positions. And if you look at what Joe Schoen did this offseason, some of those position groups were addressed, and I would argue that those position groups are playing so much better than the previous what, like maybe 5 years, 10 years, you could even argue. I'm referencing the offensive line. So I don't really have one that you and I are like staunchly different on. What about you?
I'm trying to think if there's anything I staunchly disagree with you on. I don't think that is the case. I'm trying to think of maybe something in the past that we disagreed on. Maybe John Michael Schmitz would be the one there, but that's that's a draft evaluation. And I think there's been plenty of, and obviously he's still got a long way to go. This is not like who's right, who's wrong. It's different. And we were a little different on that one. I don't know who else we were really different on in the draft. Like, we both had similar thoughts on Neal. I feel like we both had similar thoughts on Kayvon. I feel like this is like the only way I think we would find a disagreement, because as far as like the actual product, once they're drafted, we watch the tape together. And to be quite frank, there's a lot of times I just defer to your opinions on the tape, because I think you know how to watch this game better than I do. Just to be honest about the situation, I think that's not a crazy statement to make. But as far as what we disagree on, I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I mean, this team, since Daniel Jones was drafted, they have the third fewest wins of any NFL team in the NFL. That doesn't mean it's Daniel Jones' fault, but it also doesn't mean he's not part of the problem. And I think Nick and I have discussed at length the limitations of this quarterback on this roster for a large period of time. Even today, someone, responded to the post I made, Nick, about, this long breakdown of the deep passes. Like, if Daniel Jones can improve the deep passing, isn't he that, isn't everything great because he's doing everything else at an elite level? And it's like, no, dude, no.
The pause was perfect, dude. That was a perfect pause.
Can't you see this? Do I have to get into why he's not doing everything else at an elite level right now, or no? Because and clearly it's a no. I can't get into this stuff over and over again. But if we disagreed more on the quarterback, that might help find a disagreement if we're looking for one. But there is nothing we disagree on, really. I'm sure I've been way too high on Wisconsin players over the years, so I'm sure you disagreed on some of those.
No, I'd argue that you have been too low on certain Wisconsin players that are absolute studs.
Like who? Like Braylon?
I think Braylon Allen, you were way too low on.
He was not good at college, but yes, agreed. I was definitely way too low on him.
And then the defensive lineman, I can't remember his name right now, who ended up.
Oh, your boy from the Steelers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's on the Steelers. Why am I forgetting his name? I'm usually good with that, but I don't remember his name. Yeah. So those were like two Wisconsin. And I feel like, Dan, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of go out of your way to be negative on Wisconsin players because you're aware of the fact that you love these players because you watch them for 4 years. Right. You follow the Wisconsin Badgers. You're like, you know what? That guy wasn't as good as I hoped you'd be. If he didn't live up to your college potential, you throw him out the window. But I think deep down, you also know, like, there was talent there. I just didn't get to see it with the Wisconsin Badgers. So now maybe you actually resent that dude because you're like, you weren't good, and now he goes to the NFL, like Braylon Allen, for instance. And you're like, yeah, of course I know he's 20 years old and he's 235 pounds and he's really fast and he's all, but he didn't live up to his potential in college. So now I'm holding against, but now he's with a different coaching staff. And he's like, if you're a Breece Hall fantasy manager, you've got to be pissed because Braylon Allen good, like a good
I think
football
Bray
player.
Allen almost had 50% of the snaps in the second half. It's really
Why would
scary.
why would you not do that? You know,
I
like
don't know. You kind of have to. He looks so good. As good as Brees Hall is, he looks so good too, Braylon Allen. And he was this good as a freshman at 17 years old at Wisconsin, but then he regressed in a lot of ways. And I think that happens a lot with the tape. We lean, and this is some of the biggest misses in the draft community are when you lean on the recent tape versus like what happened earlier. And then you don't factor in everything that could have happened. And Braylon even said himself this week, which I didn't like to hear, but he said, at some point I'll have a podcast and the truth will come out about what happened at Wisconsin. And I was like, ugh. I mean, Wisconsin's program has fallen to a depth that I never thought they would fall to right now. They have no identity on either side of the ball after years of having an identity. Losing Jim Leonard, which I knew would be the case, is devastating their defense. They're soft on defense like they've never been before. I mean, here's the thing. At the college level, Jim Leonard's style of defense, in my opinion, should be what every defensive coordinator runs. Basically, just challenge these crap quarterbacks who can't process by putting a million guys on the line of scrimmage and blitzing a lot. And without that, they're playing a different style of defense this year. And by the way, their coordinator on the offense side of the ball, Nick, is a guy who I really loved and respected when he was at UNC with Drake May, Phil Longo. But like, it looks horrible here with Wisconsin. And I'm just like, now to be fair to Phil Longo, his starting quarterback for the year got injured, tore his ACL right away. Van Dyke, the kid that transferred from Miami.
Yeah.
And like they have some like crap backup quarterback in. And it's just life with a backup quarterback is devastating. But I don't want to talk too much Wisconsin. Let's move on to some other questions on this mailbag before we get out of here. Let's see. That one was asked already. Let's see this one. K. Moby asks, considering the vastly improved offensive line, the ceiling being reached for Jones, and a hit or miss defense, what are your realistic expectations for the rest of the season? That's a good question.
Realistic expectations for the rest of the season. I think they can sit here and do kind of what they did last year. And it's weird because, look, the Giants are 1-3. The Giants were 1-3 at this point last season after they beat Arizona in week 2. I was at that game. But the Giants right now are playing so much better than they were playing last season. But you also got to add in, they played San Francisco, Seattle. They're about to play again. They played some difficult teams last season, but they were embarrassed in week 1, and that sucked all the air out. I think they're a better franchise right now, and I still think they'll find a way to squeak to like 6 wins. I'm trying to maybe feel out exactly where that is. They again need to like play mistake-free football. And everyone says, oh, you got to play mistake-free football. And it's like, oh, no shit, of course. But it's really hard to do that when the defense is trying to force you to make mistakes. But the Giants don't have that counterpunch to overcome the mistakes. And that's the problem at this point. So where do I see this team going? I see them finding a way to squeak out another 6-win season, and they're going to pick 10th in the draft or 9th in the draft or
might be around
like
6th
that.
Again for 6 wins.
Maybe 6, 7 wins, something like that. But
should be around 6.
And again, and a couple of the gimmies that we thought weren't gimmies, like Minnesota, that was a gimme. Definitely not a gimme. We thought they'd get their asses kicked by the Browns before the season. Was not that. Washington, they got to play them again. Washington's balling out of their mind. They're
projecting 2 wins there. Now it's probably 2 losses, if we're going to be honest.
But then again, it's like I look at the Eagles, and it sucks that the Giants. The Giants didn't play the Eagles like right now. They play them in a couple weeks, but they're probably going to have AJ Brown back. They have this bye week to kind of figure out what the hell's wrong with them. They're going to have Devonta Smith back, and they're going to be healthy. And Nick Sirianni is going to. Well, he might figure out what the hell's going on with that team. But I would have loved to play them right now because they're at their weakest and they're most vulnerable. So can the Giants steal a win against Philadelphia with one of their 2 games? I think it's possible.
It's definitely possible. Like I'm going to look right now at the Giants schedule as I filibuster and talk a little bit about
the Giants got Seattle, you got Cincinnati, and then I think you have Philly. So of those games, now Philly's going to be rested again, but of those games you could win all 3. I don't think that will happen. I think they're going to lose to Seattle, just like I said in the Matty thing. But is it possible that they could win? Yes, given the fact that the Giants are more well-rested if they have Malik Neighbors. Seattle's been traveling. They're on a short week. Seattle has all those injuries on the defense. There is a path to where that could be an upset victory. I don't envision it happening. Cincinnati, their defense sucks. The Giants should be able to score against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then the Eagles, I don't know if they'll win, and I can't remember if that's at home. Do you have the schedule in front of you? Or if that's
that one's at home,
Yeah. That one's at home, so that'd be the one that they should see since the Giants are allergic to winning in Philadelphia in recent memory. So if they could squeeze 2 wins out of the next 3 weeks, I think they could find their way to 6, 7 wins.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they are able to do that. Some of these games that, like you said, looked winnable at the beginning of the season. Commanders, I thought they might sweep them. I don't think that anymore. Steelers on the road, I don't like that anymore on Monday night. I never loved it, to be honest, but now I really don't like that one at all. Even Panthers in Germany, like they should win that game, quote unquote, but the way Dalton's playing, like that's no guarantee. And I don't know if the Giants can stop an Andy Dalton-led offense, as ridiculous as that sounds. I also don't know if they're going to stop a Joe Burrow-led offense, as ridiculous as that may sound, but it may be true. All of these wins to me are contingent on Malik Neighbors playing. If he's out or he gets re-injured because they're throwing him the ball 38% of the time, it's dire at that point. The Saints have turned into a game that used to be considered winnable, and now I'm like, I don't know. The Saints are a good football team. Baker and the Bucks, that's another game on their schedule. Doubtful they win that one. The Ravens is on the schedule. In Atlanta is a winnable game, even on the road, and then the Colts are a winnable game, even especially at home. I think, it's possible looking at this schedule. I mean, they're a well-coached team to an extent. They have a good designed offense. He won 6 games last year, Brian Daboll, but remember, some of those games were against the teams picking in the top 3. 3 of those wins were against teams picking in the top 3. 2 against Washington last year with a lame duck coach that ended up with a 3rd overall pick, and 1 against New England last year with a coach that got fired and ended up with the second overall and 3rd overall pick. I had that reversed. That was 3 of their 6 wins last year. They are looking at this schedule. They have 1 game against a team that's going to pick in the top 3. That's the Panthers. I don't think any of the other games are against teams that are picking in the top 3. So if you look at that math side of it, they have 1 win right now. They could be looking more toward the 4-win range or the 3-win range.
They could.
Yeah.
I still think there's a lot of variability with this season. The thing is, they've been in every game other than week 1. So they've been competitive, and that's half the battle. Is you're at least giving yourself an opportunity to win the football game. And when you have talented football players like Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson who could do things for you on offense, I think you might be able to squeak out a win that you're not supposed to because of one move that one of those individual players made. So again, man, I could see them winning 6. I could see them winning 3. There's still a lot of variability there.
The other thing about that is, though, we talked earlier, and we don't want to get too much longer on this, but I'll say this one more thing about if the Giants, will the Giants be a worse team on offense with Drew Lock at quarterback? I think they will be a worse team on offense personally with Drew Lock at quarterback. I'm not guaranteeing that. I don't know that for sure. I've never seen him run the system, but I think the ball will be out late. They might be less on time. They might have to punt more, and they might turn the ball over more. All of those things might happen. They might manage pockets worse too. I think it'll be worse than Joe. And when the Giants are eliminated from the playoffs, they will be benching Jones. They're not stupid. They understand the injury guarantee, and they understand the repercussions of the injury guarantee. They're not just some super loyal team, Mara, blah, 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 that all these like conspiracy theorists say. Like Denver bench Russ, Oakland or Vegas bench Carr. The Giants will bench Jones when the time comes where that injury guarantee is at real risk because they're going to cut him at that point. They're out of the playoffs. They're obviously not bringing him back. Then they go to Drew Lock. It's like they could lose every game from that point on potentially. So then it's like really barreling down to 3-4
Jones
wins.
is going to sign in Carolina, and Canales is going to turn him into a Pro Bowler.
Some fans keep telling
me. Could you imagine that, dude?
But some fans keep telling me, I don't. That's not going to.
No,
happen.
I'm joking, obviously.
Yeah, no, I know.
That would be like Giants.
That will happen. So
yeah, I mean. That is. All right. Neil Brown says a non-Daniel Jones question. Does Evan Neal have the skill set to be a good NFL guard? Indication Giants are working on a transition to guard. Is there indication on that? Because
there's no indication on that. Yeah.
That's all speculation on like Twitter people, like people like us. We want that to happen. But Brian Daboll quickly shut that down. I think this was like prior to week 1 when it was confirmed that Evan Neal was not going to be starting. I think it was at the end of training camp. He said something like, no, he's our swing tackle. He's playing tackle for us. He's a tackle. And we're all just like, come on. But, they know best. And I think I brought it up in the last mailbag, Dan. A lot of it is because you need that swing tackle. And I don't know if you feel comfortable enough with Evan Neal to kick him inside. And then if somebody gets hurt, then you need to move him back out. That could be a nightmare. So they're just going to stick with him at tackle. And it sucks because I think he could be a starting guard.
Yeah, I'm with you.
He was at Alabama, dude. Exactly. At a high level, too.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think he does that skill set based on we've already seen it on tape. And it kind of eliminates one of his biggest problems, which is losing to the outside, losing up the arc. So
just being on an island in general, dude.
Yeah, just being on an island as an offensive lineman is not easy. Though it's funny because this year, they would have given him a lot of help. Obviously, I think if he had played over Illuminor, I don't know what their plan would have been for him, but either way, it's not ideal. You want, if you're playing someone at tackle, you want him to win on an island or be able to at least, which Neil never proved to, at least during his short chance to do it. Rob Travis asks, can you guys do a breakdown of Brian Burns? How is he doing? Do you think he was worth the money and draft picks?
Yeah, there is a film breakdown from a couple weeks ago on Brian Burns. You can go check it out. It's on this channel. Was he worth the money and the draft picks? Look, I still buy into his skill set. I don't know if he's going to live up to that contract. Now, that contract might look good in like a year when other edge rushers are getting paid substantially more than Brian Burns, and he's still a young asset. Now, is he worth the picks as well? I think this is an argument that's going to go back and forth. I agreed with Joe Shane's decision to trade the 39th pick and give Brian Burns that contract because there are not a lot of pass rushers who become available in the National Football League. And Carolina just an offseason ago denied 2 first-round picks from the Los Angeles Rams. A lot of people wanted this asset, and I believe in this asset, and I don't think he is in a great situation because the offense does not put the defense in a position where they're pinning their ears back and they're rushing the passer. So I think the personnel around him also is affecting Brian Burns from reaching his potential. So in the end, I still do agree with it. I'm not going to abandon ship yet. And I know that's probably not popular. A lot of people are saying like, oh, well, they should have did this. They should have did that. Well, if they were looking to compete this year and they were looking to complement Dexter Lawrence and they were looking to alleviate some of the burden on Kayvon Thibodeau, going out and getting Brian Burns was the right move. I completely do understand the other side of the argument, though, like Kool-Aid McKinstry or whoever you could have gotten for the 39th pick, plus that cap, that there is a very valuable argument there. But I think the process was solid in getting Brian Burns. But I'm willing to listen to the flip side of that and entertain it as well.
Yeah, some of the main points you made are, look, he's not going to have as many opportunities when the team is always down. It's just the reality of the situation. The second thing is a thing I come back to, and I've changed my mind a lot on over the years. I like the realized assets over the, supposed assets or the future assets. A lot of these draft picks end up being bust, especially in that range. The Giants have really not done a good job of locating talent, with the exception of McKinney, who they let go.
I agree, Dan, and I want to try to steel man the other argument. You should have known that you were not in a position to compete with Daniel Jones as your quarterback. But it's kind of like, should the Giants have just burnt this season away and sucked and just ripped the Band-Aid off and cut Daniel Jones, or try to be competitive? You got to think about this from Shane and Dable's perspective. They're trying to preserve their jobs. If this stuff just fell out, if this season, just would go bottom up, they probably wouldn't have their jobs. And then you could say, well, you shouldn't go out and make a trade just based on your job security. It's like, I get that. But at the same time, Brian Burns is not here for 1 year. Brian Burns is a young, explosive pass rusher who can offer a lot for your defense. And although we haven't seen it translate to stats and sacks quite yet, even though I would argue he should have 2 sacks because that stupid penalty on Andrew Phillips from week 2 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You see how the offense is scheming to remove him, and it stresses it. Every offense coordinator goes up against this Giants defense that has a lot of hold on it, and they sweat their asses off because you have 97 and Brian Burns you have to deal with, and Kayvon is Kayvon, and Kayvon had a good game, and I hope he develops. I'm not overly optimistic about that, but I hope he develops. So I still stand by. Look, I think he significantly improves the potential of your defense, and it's a little bit more than that as well. So I'm still okay with it, but it's the Giants, man. Is it going to work out? I don't know,
Yeah, we'll find out. Cruise 80 asks, what are your guys' realistic expectations for the team in the future if they're able to draft a quarterback in the top 5 of this current draft class? What do you expect from years 1 through 5, for example, on a rookie contract? This is from him. He says, I feel Giants fans, our standards have become so low.
Oh, our standards are in hell, bro. Like they're low. Like there is no ceiling to the standards of the New York Giants right now, and it sucks. It really sucks. I don't know these quarterback prospects enough to give a well thought out evaluation of this, to be honest. Cruise 80, but if they can land a quarterback that they like, and he's on that rookie contract, and you have these veterans under contract for a while, and Andrew Thomas, Brian Burns, and Dexter Lawrence, and some of the young players that they drafted that I remain high on, I think the Giants could be in the conversation for a playoff team again. But you need to fix that quarterback, and that quarterback needs to be, I would say, like an echelon or 2 echelons above Daniel Jones, and actually threaten defenses from a vertical standpoint, so they're not playing top down like they have been playing the Giants for the last 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Theoretically speaking, Cruz, if they were able to, for example, theoretically speaking, draft a CJ Stroud type, I disagree with the haters, and I won't call them haters. It's a stupid word to forget I said that. With the skeptics who think this roster is so far away from being competitive. Dude, they're top 5 in sacks this year, the Giants defense, and they're top 5 in fewest sacks allowed. The pass protection has gotten to a really good level. They have one of the best receivers in the NFL. Yes, I said that. The stats all show it. Yeah, Malik Neighbors. And they have weapons around him who I think are being held back by the quarterback play, if I'm going to be quite frank, and I will here. So if they were able to get that, I think they could be really competitive, really fast, because they'd be one of the best offenses, in my opinion, in the entire NFL. I do believe that with a Stroud-type quarterback. The question is, how do you get the Stroud-type quarterback? You said with a top 5 pick in this draft. I'm not so sure. I mean, we'll find out as we get closer to draft season. At least from a physical trait standpoint, though, I'm not too thrilled about anyone in this class, with the exception of Milroe, I guess, who I think can be coached by Dable to be like pretty good and like solid quarterback. Maybe like what the Eagles get out of a Jalen Hurts type quarterback, but not necessarily sure he's ever going to be the Stroud type. The Stroud types I see coming up are Arch Manning and Nico, and that's based all on physical tools. I haven't watched the tape of all these players. I'm just a physical tools guy, because guess what? Physical tools are what we know will translate from college to the NFL. The rest of this stuff, it's hard to see. It's hard to evaluate anticipatory throwing and processing when the college offense looks nothing like the NFL offense, and when the college game is designed in a different way with the hash marks, where the game is at least schematically completely different. So you kind of have to, in my mind, at least judge on some of the physical stuff. And I'm not so sure I love the physical traits from the quarterbacks in this class coming up, but we'll see what happens. And you never know, because Jaden Daniels was, again, not expected to be this top tier quarterback from a prospect standpoint.
Neither was Stroud, really.
Neither was Stroud.
He went second overall, so the NFL believed in him. Right. I'm not saying that, but a lot of fans weren't like, yo, this is the next Andrew Luck. You know, that wasn't the narrative around some of these quarterbacks. So I want to at least have that in the back of our minds as we go into draft season. It's just, this is where it gets tricky. And I can understand why some Giant fans are skeptical, and they do critique Joe Schoen as, do you trust Joe Schoen and Brian Dable to identify that player?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, that's a great question. We have to, if they keep him, we have to hope. Snackadicious. What an interesting name.
Snack Daddy-icious.
Oh, that's what it is. Snack Dadicious. Daticus? No, Snack Daticus.
You think it's, yeah, it could be a kiss.
That's in a kiss. That's in a kiss.
Circle back to us and let us know it's in a kiss or an ish. Now, a kiss makes much more sense.
But anyway. Never know that. He says, how much do you think Daniel Jones holds back this team? And do you think they'll go to Drew Lock at some point this season?
Yeah, we've touched on this a decent amount in the last 2 podcasts. Daniel Jones certainly holds this team back to some degree. I mean, if you listen to this podcast, you know why. We've detailed it for a very long time at this point. And then I do think they'll go to Lock when they're out of playoff contention. And I don't know if Lock's going to give them a better chance to win. I think he improves some of the arm talent deficiencies on the deep pass. I don't even know if it's arm talent. Like, the arm strength he has a freaking live arm, but I don't know if he puts a lot of touch on it and things like that. But yeah, I think we'll see Lock eventually.
So the only thing I would add to that, I think Nick's nailed that. I think we've discussed this at length. The only thing I would add to that is, I used to be certain, Nick, it would be they go to him when they're officially eliminated from the playoffs. I think there's a chance now, and I'm not saying this is a guarantee, there's a chance now they turn to Lock sooner if they feel like the players in that locker room feel like Daniel Jones is holding them back from his inability to challenge on the deep half. And if a game like Seattle turns into last year's Seattle, right, where Jones was just absolutely horrific, cost the Giants a game with that pick 6, missed hot reads for the blitzers and just got destroyed, like was awful all game. If he has a game like that coming up or at some point, Nick, I'm not going to, and then let's say maybe 2 games like that in a row. I think they could just turn to Lock just right away at that point, because they don't feel like Jones no longer gives them the best chance to win. But again, this is not the same thing as turning to Tyrod. And remember, Nick, or listeners, I should say, not Nick, Tyrod Taylor last year had the 8th best EPA from a clean pocket. The Giants just rarely gave him clean pockets. Tyrod Taylor had the best in NFL explosive pass rate of all quarterbacks. And you saw it with your own eyes with those 70 and 60-yard touchdowns to Slayton in the last 2 weeks of the season, hit the receiver in stride, walk-in touchdowns. I can only think about what Tyrod would do this year with the vastly improved pass protection, night and day versus what he had last year, and Malik Neighbors on the roster, which he didn't have last year. To me, they would be potentially 3-1 if he was able to stay healthy, just by hitting those deep passes and just by operating that much better out of clean pockets. But then, because Jones was 42nd in EPA out of clean pockets last year, and DeVito was 43rd. So just some of the worst quarterback play from clean pockets last year of all all NFL quarterbacks, by the numbers, by the EPA numbers. So is what it is on that front. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. Okay, James Moore says, I think at least half of the starting quarterbacks in this league could take this team and coaching staff to the playoffs. Am I delusional, or does it show how close we are from being a playoff contending team? I appreciate the quality of the work you guys put into the podcast. Much love from the UK. Good question.
Much love from the UK. Yeah, we just had Matty Brown on the podcast, also from the United Kingdom. Yeah, so I agree. I think half the quarterback. I'm trying to think, like, what's, like, I know this is kind of a stupid conversation. Let's have fun though. Like, who's the last quarterback that fits into what James is suggesting right here? And James,
Sure.
I do agree with your point. You're not crazy or delusional.
Well, we can do this real quick. Let's run through if the quarterbacks we think would give this team. I'll just say a name and you say yes or no if they could be a playoff contender with this quarterback. Dak Prescott.
Of course.
I agree. Yes. Jaden Daniels.
It's hard to say. He's a rookie, but playoffs, yeah, sure. Because the Giants, yeah, I'm gonna go yes.
I go definite yes there. Jalen Hurts. That's interesting.
I'm gonna say yes, but that is more interesting than I would have hoped, given that he is on my dynasty team.
Yeah. Well, they're signed. They have so much money tied up. I think your dynasty.
You would have said the same thing about Carson Wentz, though.
I did say the same thing about Deshaun Watson, which is why I drafted him in that league, if we're referring to the same league that we're both in. And I'm just angry about that because it was a pure contract-based drafting. I didn't even believe in him. But it is what it is on that front. At least I have Kyler and Mahomes in that league. But it Hurts, I would think that Dable's able to scheme up stuff for Hurts. I would think they'd be borderline with Hurts, but contending. We're just talking about playoff contending, right? The Giants are 1-3 right now. So I think yes is the answer there. Let's go to the next division. Jared Goff.
Yes.
Yes, for me too. So now we're at 100% so far. Caleb Williams.
I'm going to say no.
I think it's a no for now, though. Again, I would be intrigued to see how Brian Dable can scheme up.
100%.
I think he has the stone worst offensive coordinator in the NFL, and Shane Waldron, and also in addition to that, really bad offensive line play from the Bears this year. They've been horrible in pass pro, while the Giants have been good in pass pro. So I'll give a no, but that one is even a squeaky no for me. Sam Darnold.
Oh, geez.
That's tough.
That is tough. I want to lean yes, but I feel like I'm being a little aggressive there.
I think I'm okay taking one of those two being yeses, to be honest.
I have a guy in mind, and I want to run it past you.
Okay.
And this might be my threshold. Derek Carr.
That would be a no from me.
I could see a yes there.
Okay. I would be on the no train for that one, but I could see a yes for that for sure. A healthy Kirk Cousins, I could see a yes. Jordan Love is a yes, right? Baker Mayfield is a yes for playoff contending. I mean, to answer his question, we can go through all the teams. I don't think we even really need to. I think the answer is more than half, because we've already gone through almost all the NFC and pretty much a yes across.
We haven't even mentioned like the very good quarterbacks.
Right.
What quarterbacks are worse than the quarterback option the Giants have right now? And, you have like Deshaun Watson. I would definitely throw in that.
Worse.
Yeah. And then there are others, I think, but like Gardner Minshew, I would say. But it starts to get how much worse are we actually talking here?
Right.
Andy Dalton, it's like, dude, I watch Andy Dalton against the Raiders.
Definitely not Dalton. I will not accept Dalton.
But like, we got to put this in account. You see what we're saying here, right? And people be like, oh, you guys hate Jones. It's like, no, it's not a hate Jones type of thing. We're just being objective with the situation and what the quarterback offers. And it's bleak, sure. But I think a lot of the quarterbacks who are starting for other teams right now, if they had a whole offseason in Brian Dable's system with the talent of Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale and this offensive line and some of the defensive pieces that would be maximized with this quarterback on the roster, you can realistically say a decent amount, more than half.
Yeah, definitely more than half. I think we can say that with certainty. It's scarier to go down the path of individual quarterback play and who's starting right now that would actually be worse in this system with Malik Neighbors, as defined as Dable has made it, with some of the stuff he schemed up and with the offensive line improvement. Again, I've always said this, and like everyone, has spoken over the years about how bad Jones has had it. He's had Andrew Thomas for most of his career, and Andrew Thomas is an elite left tackle. Most quarterbacks don't get that. So as bad as things have been, and they have been bad at the past,
they've been very bad though. Like I agree with
not taking that away, but not everyone had Thomas.
Yes. I mean, things could be bad. And I know you understand this. Things can be bad. And then the quarterback not be put in the best situation. That quarterback still be limited.
Right. I completely agree with that. But it's a great question because we easily got to over half. All right. Shane Banks or Shanae Banks.
Shanae.
Banks. Sorry, Shanae. I do apologize for that. Do you guys think we should draft Travis Hunter to pair with Banks to fix the DB room and get a new quarterback in next year's draft or in free agency?
It's so early, Shanae, and thank you. But I would love Travis Hunter, man. I would have
Travis Hunter, especially if we kept Shane Bowen, which I don't think we would.
So I haven't done too much like 2025 NFL draft scouting yet. I think he might be my favorite cornerback that I'll ever scout. Off the little bit that I've seen, and I watch a decent amount of Colorado football. The things he does, it's so unique, man. He is such a threat. You put him on the boundary side, he eliminates like quick game options, dude. He is the type of player.
So fast.
He is the type of player who is going to remove high-low concepts, that easy high-low read that a lot of quarterbacks rely upon to the boundary side. He's going to remove that because of his positioning and how quick, instinctual this dude is on baiting quarterbacks and leveraging defenders and playing the midpoint of a defender, whether it be like, say it's a smash concept, the curl. He could stay just in a position where he's deterring from the curl and then flip his hips and then sink underneath that 7 route and undercut it for an interception, where it's putting such a burden on the quarterback to loft it over top of him. He's such a defensive weapon, and that doesn't even go into what he can offer on offense, which I don't know how much he would play offense when he gets to the NFL. I am in love with that prospect, dude. Travis Hunter's a stud, dude.
Well, I was going to say, not only can he potentially play offense, but the fact that he can play wide receiver at that level and he's that good at the catch point shows that he'd also be like, have that skill set to everything you just broke down. Plus he's going to be making interceptions and making crazy plays at the catch point. I mean, he will go in the top 5, and I can already foresee something, Nick. We took some heat for advocating for Malik Neighbors over players like JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix. I already foresee a situation that could be happening again with us too, where we're not advocating for the quarterback in this year's draft class. If we get to that point where we have
so much to play out,
and it's like Travis Hunter or
Will Johnson,
any of these quarterbacks, really, to be quite frank. And it's just kind of how we evaluate our stuff. We're not a forced quarterback podcast. We respect and understand how much this team needs it, but we're not a forced quarterback no matter what podcast.
It's the opportunity cost and the ceiling of that quarterback.
I don't want to lose Travis Hunter for one of these like Bo Nix type prospects.
Yeah. Motivational Clips asks, if you could add a total of 5 players to this Giants team, 2 superstars, 2 role players, and 1 rookie, who would you add? Key is no quarterbacks allowed. Oh, geez. So we're still not making the play. No, I'm just joking. I just screwed around.
Make the playoffs with all of that. I will start with this is more top of the head, but I'm going to start with some superstars. I'm going to start with Patrick Surtain as my first superstar.
That's my first superstar as well.
Okay, that's my first superstar. And I believe so strongly in, this is an interesting one. I could have fun and I could put Fred Warner on this defense, which would just be so much fun to have.
Fred Warner and Bobby Okereke and Micah, if you want to just add him in there, because Micah's a good player now too.
That's me having fun with it. But my true belief is that trench play wins games. And so I'll put Chris Jones on this defense as my second superstar. So I got Jones and Surtain. My role players, it's so hard to define what an actual role player is.
That's where it gets a little confusing.
This is where it gets kind of nasty. But give me think of like a fair thing to call out, like a fair role player thing here.
Like, would Bryce Huff be a role player last year?
But he's actually apparently having a really bad year. I don't know that.
I'm just trying to define what a role player is, because he was a very effective football player who helped the Jets win football games. But
I don't know what a role player is.
It's not basketball, Yeah. Because Julian Love's not a role player. He plays like every snap. Right. But when you I think
we have to skip role player.
I think that's what he's talking about. Somebody who is a good player who may play a lot of snaps, but isn't a superstar. You want to just go with that instead?
I guess. I mean, I got to be honest with you, Nick. Like, I don't know if I have that many of those players in mind. I would really love to study the teams to answer that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, same. That's why we're doing this off the cuff.
Yeah, but we're not watching tape of these teams. I'm just gonna. If you have guys in mind you like for that, I'll give you that. But you haven't even named your second superstar. So first,
no, it's gonna be. I'm agreeing with Chris Jones. I think he complements Dexter so well, and then your defense just. Patrick Surtain, Chris Jones, and I'm still, I think, looking to upgrade the defense. Part of me wants to get a wide receiver though, but if we're not getting a superstar like a part of me says, should I use the role player on a defensive line and get another superstar wide receiver? Because I could have
done that. Yeah,
I'm going to take Patrick Surtain and Justin Jefferson.
Okay, yeah, I should have done that. I
And then
should have done
I'm going to get a role player defensive line, but I don't know who that, like, is Kobe Turner a role player? Because he's not a superstar, but he's just so good. So like I'm
Yeah,
gonna just
I think that's a
add
good
him
cat.
in. Kobe
Yeah.
Turner as a role player, someone who's not a superstar, just a good football player.
How
Someone who
about like Aleem McNeil? Would he be considered or like?
No, I think he constitutes this role player, even though
Okay.
I think he's a very good footballer. Every time I
Yeah.
watch the Lions, I love Aleem McNeil.
I
That dude's
know.
a stud.
I like him. Or like DJ Reader would be fun on this defense. I don't know if he's considered like a role player. They signed him for a decent contract. But yeah, how about the rookie? Can't be a quarterback.
So that's where I'm like, I'm not 100% sure because.
I know where I'm going with it.
Okay, go.
I'm going with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Okay, so I'm gonna take. See, now we're talking about contracts, and we're getting really in the sticky wickets. Because I would go with Marv if it was contractual, right? But Chris Jones gets paid a shit ton though too. So if I were to go a defensive lineman as a rookie, Byron Murphy, who we were just talking about, that guy's, I think, would complement Dexter Lawrence so well. But I'm sure there are plenty of rookies that we're overlooking at the moment, and we're not really thinking about who could also fit right into this and be an excellent addition.
Joe Alt for sure we would consider, right?
Yeah.
JC Latham, yeah. For me, it would definitely be Marvin Harrison Jr. to be honest, because I just would love to have Neighbors and Harrison Jr. on this roster.
Yeah. So if the Giants, so I want a cornerback, interior defensive line, wide receiver. Those are like 2 of the 3 of the superstars are going to be in those positions because I think they just affect the game, and it's what the Giants also need. And just to think Malik Neighbors with a wide receiver, another wide receiver, and Wandale. Like, no offense to Slayton or Hyatt, but I mean, geez, man, this offense would. I almost said something mean. Would almost be Jones proof, but no. No, I'm just.
It has been
around,
so
guys.
far this year to an extent. Yeah,
I'm just messing around.
No, I know. All right. That's all the questions we have. We're happy we got to get to all of them with the additional ones coming in this preview podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. I didn't ask at the beginning, so I'm going to ask now. I just had a meeting with some higher ups at my regular job, CBS, and I got some insight into what ticks for the algorithm on YouTube. And I was right about everything, which is crazy. Well, there's one extra thing. There's 4 concepts. You need to like these videos if you enjoy and want to help us grow. You need to subscribe. Apparently, subscribes in video are really important to boosting it in the algorithm. So if you're new to the show and you enjoyed this and you haven't heard us before, please subscribe now. You're like the biggest factor in helping us, to be completely honest. And then comments. So it's those 3 things. And then one extra thing that I didn't know about, which is duration on the video, but we're fine in that regard. Like, people who watch us stay for the content, so I'm not worried as much about that one. So please, if you want to help us, just hit like right now. It takes 3 seconds. Hover your hand over the mouse and click the like button. That's a 3-second process. Subscribe could also take another 2.5 to 3 seconds out of your day. That's 6 seconds, and that really helps us. So please do so. Otherwise, have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.